Welcome to Spotlight, a show dedicated to highlighting the cast, crew, and creators responsible for bringing our favorite kaiju films to life. In today's episode, we're focusing on possibly the most important person in the history of the Godzilla franchise, the creator of Godzilla, Tomoyuki Tanaka. Tomoyuki Tanaka was born into a wealthy family on April 26, 1910 in Osaka, Honshu, Japan. As a boy, Tanaka loved silent movies and often walked many miles from his home to view them in theaters. At age 14, Tanaka viewed the American film The Covered Wagon, directed by James Cruise, which captivated him with its brilliant cinematography and remained his all-time favorite movie for the rest of his life. Tanaka's obsession with motion pictures as a youth was so intense that his family threatened to disown him for focusing more on his passions than his studies. Though he went on to study economics in school, his real passion was to become an actor on stage or in film, and he joined a few theater troupes during his time in university. But eventually, Tanaka began to realize that he, in his own words, only had average dramatic skills and turned his focus towards behind-the-scenes work, and even directed a few plays in the 1930s. Tanaka joined Toho Studios 5 years later. During his early times at the company, he worked in the literature department where studio head Iwao Mori found him and groomed him into becoming a producer. Tanaka spent most of his early producing years making war films. 1952's The Man Who Came to Port was especially significant as it united Tanaka with director Ishiro Honda and special effects craftsman Eiji Tsuburaya for the first time. Because most producers during this time period were older, they tended to leave the creative decisions of the filmmakers to the director only. But Tanaka's young age saw him interact more personally than other producers. Tanaka always had his finger on the pulse of what was popular, and in 1954, this would help him in creating the biggest project of his career and life, the original Godzilla. The story of Tanaka's inspiration for the Godzilla story is a tale shrouded in ambiguity, but the story goes something like this. Tanaka was on an airplane home from Indonesia after a project with Toho and a film studio there fell under due to some external event. As Tanaka stared out his window, he began wondering about the recent Lucky Dragon No. 5 incident, in which a Japanese fishing trawler sailed disturbingly close to an atomic bomb test in the Pacific Ocean, resulting in the sailors becoming sick with radiation poisoning and their supply of fish being contaminated. Tanaka also had in mind a recent monster movie from America, 1953's The Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. Combining the atomic theme of the Lucky Dragon incident and the reptilian nature of the beast, Tanaka came up with the concept that we know today as Godzilla. The story of the rest of Godzilla's development is history, and you can watch my Toho Scope episode on the film for more information about it. Tanaka's Godzilla story managed to become a huge success, grossing millions of yen and earning Eiji Tsuburaya and his special effects crew numerous awards. Pleased with the success, Tanaka immediately set a sequel into production. 1955's Godzilla Raids Again was notable for being the forerunner of the Godzilla series' forte of monster vs. monster action, which Tanaka himself was responsible for. After the first Godzilla sequel, Tanaka began producing other kinds of monster movies. Ensuring the best possible stories, he often commissioned science fiction authors to pen up a story involving a monster before passing it off to Toho writers who fancied it up into a viable screenplay. Films such as Rodan, Mothra, Matango, and even the original Godzilla all started out as either short stories or as treatments from popular authors. Tanaka's science fiction films were not all about giant monsters, however. Some of Toho's science fiction output during the 50s and 60s consisted of human-sized monsters as well. Films like the aforementioned Matango, The Human Vapor, and Secret of the Telegian featured monsters born from irradiated humans. Tanaka's creative input consisted mostly of newspaper headlines and short stories giving a plethora of ideas to sort through. Throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s, Tanaka produced every single one of Toho's science fiction films, often cited as the golden age for the company due to the massive influx of new ideas, creative effects work, and variety in tone. Though Tanaka was most famous for his contribution to Japanese science fiction, he was also a producer of some of Japan's other successful features at the time, including many acclaimed films by Akira Kurosawa. Tanaka was always insistent on adding elements to expand Toho's audience. For some of Toho's science fiction films, Tanaka requested giant monsters to be added where they were otherwise absent, much to the chagrin of directors like Ishiro Honda. Movies like Atragon and Gorath featured kaiju that don't seem to have much influence in the actual story because they were put in place by Tanaka. Tanaka also broadened the international appeal of Toho's movies by arranging meetings with American producers or casting English actors in their productions. Not all of Tanaka's decisions worked favorably, however. According to a 1985 interview, Tanaka regretted transforming Godzilla into more of a heroic character in the 1970s, implying that the change in personality was responsible for the series' decline in popularity around that time. In 1984, Tanaka revived Godzilla from his 9-year slumber and wanted to return the character to his darker roots, not seen since the first film in 1954. Originally, he had hoped director Ishiro Honda would join the project to direct, but Honda's commitments to his close friend Akira Kurosawa caused him to decline. Despite Honda's lack of involvement, Godzilla, as it was titled in Japan, became a success success and revitalized the Godzilla franchise. However, Tanaka's age had begun catching up to him, and throughout the second Godzilla series through the late 80s and 90s, Tanaka was relegated to an executive producing role. He focused most of his work through his successor, Shogo Tomiyama. Tanaka's name was attached to every single Godzilla film from the rest of the second series, including 1995's Godzilla vs. Destroya. Tomoyuki Tanaka passed away of a stroke on April 2, 1997 in Tokyo. He was 86 years old. The legacy he left behind was an immense one. Henry Saperstein, an American producer who worked with Tanaka and Toho to distribute their films to America, cited Tanaka as the reason the Godzilla series kept its longevity. Though he did not live to see its release, the 1998 American-made Godzilla film is dedicated to his memory. Tanaka's drive and ambition to produce science fiction films resulted in some of the greatest films to come out of the genre. Without his passion, there would be no Rodan, no Mothra, and certainly no Godzilla. Thank you for watching this episode of Spotlight. See you in the next video.